Coming at you from Los Angeles, this is Mobility Revolution, powered by HireCar. We're going to take you on a journey through the unique business models and income opportunities that mobility as a service has to offer. From selling cars to sharing scooters, you'll learn how you fit in to the mobility revolution. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Mobility Revolution. We're your hosts. I'm Nate Ryan.
And I'm Reese Moulton.
And today on the show we have Ryan Gerardi. Ryan and I met at the NADA conference in Vegas last February. And he's the host of the AutoConverse podcast and really a true thought leader in the mobility space and what's happening with dealerships and how, auto buying is making its way through new waves of technology advancements and things like that. Ryan, it's great to have you on the show. And, I'm sure our guests would love to hear a little bit more about yourself.
Well, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you go ahead and, just give us a little bit of background? How did you get into podcasting and how did you really get into podcasting about the dealer space and the mobility space?
Oh, funny. My first play at podcasting was in 2007. I was working for a company that's pretty well known now, HomeNet Auto, and I just left the company to start my own business, and I decided to get into blogging for car dealers, right? Because blogging was good SEO, and I was liking blogging, and you couldn't say the word blog. You couldn't say the word blog to a dealer. They'd chase you out. Get out of here. It'd be like a witch.
Shoot.
Yeah. So I was just SEO. I have this, I do this SEO. But really what I was doing was blogging. Mm-hmm. And I used to do music and, recording and music and live music. And I heard about this thing called podcasting. So I took a jab at it. I made 6 episodes. This was 2007. I made 6 episodes. I was using like Van Halen music in the beginning. At the time, there were about 4 other people in the industry blogging in the auto industry. And one of them was Jeff Kirshner from Dealer Refresh, who became pretty well known. He was about a year ahead of me from launching his blog. So what I would do is these guys all had blog posts. So I would do a recording and use their blog posts as the content, and mine too. And so there'd be like 5 different segments in there. And then I'd somehow get it out there. I still have the recordings, and I'll give them to you if you want to play them. They're so bad. They are horrible. Like when I listen to them, I am like, oh my God. But like, they're just...
Well, I mean, you really think about it. Back in 2007, you're really one of the first people to really get into podcast. I mean, it's 2020 now, and podcasting is becoming the new blog, essentially.
Exactly.
Right? And so,
sure,
you were 13 years ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I had stuck with it. I gave up after 6 episodes. It was so much work, and it was so crappy, and it wasn't accomplishing anything. So I was like, there was no point in doing it. But it's one of those things, and this has a lot to do with who I am today, is just stick with it. Mm-hmm. Just keep working at it, even if you don't think it's good, and even if not everyone's going to think it's good, right? No matter what you do, you're going to have critics, but just keep going at it.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't stop, man. I didn't pick back up for 10 more years.
Well, here we are.
Yeah. Crushing it.
And you guys, I mean, you just launched the HireCar podcast, about a little less than a year ago?
Yeah, I think it was about September or August we launched it.
Yeah, so maybe like 7 months ago.
Yeah.
8 months ago. Yeah.
And what a blast.
Was this your first jab at it?
First time
ever.
Never touched a microphone.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
great. Good for you. And it's fun,
thanks.
Right?
It is. It's awesome.
Yeah. I'm hooked. Like I got back into it 3 years ago. I was running advertising actually for Dealer Refresh, and we had all this webinar content, and I got my friend Chris Leslie, who is a frequenter of the site. He's a dealer in Vegas, and he had a podcast called No Parking, and I said, "Hey man, I got some ideas. Will you podcast with me?" And I think for about a year and a half, it was me and him every week getting together doing podcasts. It was fun.
Yeah, you're a content producing machine.
It's sickening, man. I mean, when people really pay attention and look, they're just like, how do you
I
get all that?
was blown away, honestly, after signing up for I think your subscriber list to your podcast and your YouTube channel. It's impressive, man, for sure.
It is, and I don't. I mean, it's a lifestyle and it's a passion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I was talking to my son today because he got all stressed out about something that happened at school. A kid stressed him out, and I said, you know what? I said most people spend all their time thinking about themselves and how they're going to conquer the world. They're not thinking about you. You know, and so you just don't let it. Just do what you got to do. You got do what you know you need to do, and just go at it.
Yeah, I've yet to read the YouTube comments, so I might take that advice. So, you know, for me, one of the greatest things about podcasting is you get to talk to really amazing people. And part of that is you get to understand this wealth of knowledge. And you're doing a weekly show. I can only imagine, you know, what you're hearing on a weekly basis about how, you know, the dealership world is evolving and adopting new technology, and really it's a resilient group, and there is becoming kind of this convergence of
you used my word, convergence. Was that from the article?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, actually, I noticed a part in the 3-part series you wrote on Convergence, where you mentioned, you know, that more and more automakers are, you know, starting to refer to themselves as mobility companies. So where do you think this all really started, and how far away are we from, you know, hearing major franchise dealerships and OEMs becoming or referring to themselves as mobility companies, or at least having a mobility centered division?
So the premise of your question, Reese, opens up what I call hypothetical conversations, right? And they're fun. It's fun to have hypotheticals and what can or, you know, could and you know, should be kind of things. But kind of like the coronavirus today, some things just have a life of their own.
Right.
We can't control how the world is responding. We can only control what we do. And I think the same thing applies in, you know, when we use the term, you know, the word mobility, is where's it all going, and where's it, you know, you can have an idea, and you know, I look at like Joe and Mike Fernari, who founded HireCar. They tapped into this idea, and there's no guarantee it's going to work, that it's going to pay off. But if you have a vision and you keep honing in on it and keep adapting and innovating around that, it could take off. And so that article on Convergence shared a somewhat fictitious story. It was kind of a mixture of, you know, kind of myself, but other people, you know,
yeah,
that I've watched grow up in the space.
Blogger for the dealerships. I thought that maybe that kind of tied back to your experience from that.
Well, I mean,
in the articles.
Yeah, it definitely did. And for your listeners, it basically talks about, you know, a young person who got into the dealer business like most people do, not planning to be there all their lives. And, you know, time goes on, and, you know, he became innovative and a trendsetter and, you know, kind of a forward thinker, but then got complacent and apathetic, and, you know, hit these plateaus, if you will. And I've seen people get to a point where it's like, and sometimes I'll feel that way. Like, I don't want to talk about the dealer business all the time, because it's, you know, what's the best way to call people and follow up with leads? And it's like, I think with mobility, which is such a ambiguous, you know, word, right? It's so all encompassing. But because of mobility, shared mobility as a service, it has brought, over the past 5 years, it has brought so many new ideas, technologies, data points, innovations, business models, and it's truly transforming everything. And it's made everything, for me, just so exciting, right? It's just reinvigorated. So that's kind of what the article was about, is if you got your head in the sand and don't tap into what's changing and evolving, and you just kind of get in a rut, this industry is going right by you,
Yep.
and it really is moving fast.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more that, mobility is kind of a life form it's evolving, and I think some of the confusion around mobility is what does it really mean? Because, it does cover everything from the bird scooters that are out on the street to what dealers are doing, and they're just a piece of this encompassing mobility evolution.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. But for dealers, um, what are have you seen any new tools or services out there that are an easy adoption for the dealers in order to kind of jump in or get their feet wet with the mobility world?
There is a lot, and you were starting to ask me earlier, and we kind of got off on a tangent on when you're asking about, what I call my programming, right? So to give people some contrast, I'm doing a dozen plus live webcasts every month, ranging from mobility tech to automotive. And you were starting to ask me about the people and learning new things, and that's one of the greatest things that I like about at least what I am doing is I'm constantly learning aspects of different businesses. I use, I've learned a lot about used cars over the past few years. That, I'm working on a blueprint for running a used car department. Now I'm really starting to learn a lot about fixed ops. And 3 years ago, I don't even think I used the word fixed ops. Now it's becoming a regular part. So I think, to answer your question, and this is what Brian Allen and I talked about at NADA in the panel with Jim Bowman from Uber for Business and Jeff Infeld from Quick Ride. When we agreed to do the panel, I told them, I said, you guys kind of decide what you want to talk about. Well, we all met up at the booth, at the Uber for Business booth, about 20 minutes before the scheduled time. And, we kind of brainstormed and mastermind what we were going to talk about. I didn't really know what Quick Ride was, and I had no clue how Hire Car and Uber worked together and how Quick Ride fit into all that. Mm-hmm. And after we talked about it and came up with the game plan, I felt like I had at least a roadmap on the conversation. So, after it was a short, 20, 25 minute discussion, I think. So between the prep discussion and the live discussion, in under an hour, I was transformed. Like I could speak now to what Hire Car and Uber and Quick Ride and how it all works. Mm-hmm. And that's learning, and that's exciting. And that's what I love about getting in a room and, every day with people that you've, just starting to get to know and talking about these ideas, because you're learning the whole time.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way, going kind of the opposite direction, right? We're on the mobility side, and every day we're having new conversations where we're learning more and more about what everybody has been doing for the last 20 years and how it's all meshing together, and this kind of formation is really amazing to see.
Learning automotive, and automotive, again, like mobility, is relatively broad, vague, and ambiguous, right? Mm-hmm. What's automotive? You could put, performance racing and, and collectors and cars and it's broad. Yep. So I use the term auto retail. Yeah. To me, even though the word dealer, car dealer, is the traditional, I mean, that's kind of the go-to word. I use the term auto retail and auto retailers because, going back to your question, Reese, with the convergence, right? Mm-hmm. To me, and this is where I think Brian Allen and I really, I think we're in sync. We really resonate because we use a lot of the same terminology. I think of a modern retailer, auto retailer, kind of like an airport. When you go to an airport, what are you going there for? You're going there as a hub to get from one place to another. But there's a whole experience there, right? There's food, there's shopping. There was some karaoke going on at the last time I was at Chicago Midway. It's kind of annoying, but they were good. But it was like, I don't want to sit here and listen to people karaoke, even though they were good while I'm at the airport. But for them, and there was a whole crowd around them, it was an experience. It was lively. It was music. So when you think of airports, it is an experience, right? Back in the, I'm gonna slightly date myself here for you guys, but back in the 80s, my mom would drop me off at the gate, like right there at the gate, and I'd get on the plane by myself. I was, 8 years old or whatever, and then fly to go see my dad, and I'd get off and he'd be there. Right? That's how it used to be. You didn't go to airports to hang out. And you didn't have to get there an hour and a half ahead of time.
Right.
You just kind of rolled right in. There was no experience there. It was strictly like a bus stop.
So what are some of those newer variables that dealers need to consider when, they're trying to improve that car buying experience for the customers?
So I think that's where things like rideshare, mobility as a service, vehicle subscriptions, I think that's what's truly going to transform the concept of a dealer into a retailer to create that user experience. If you start with the shopping experience, you're going to be in there for a few hours. And some of that time you're just sitting around waiting, and waiting because you got to talk to the F&I person and the manager. And it's like, so anything that a dealer can do to make that experience more enjoyable is going to be better. But when you think of, then you got things like service, and now you have things like mobility as a service and vehicle subscriptions. That's going to alter the experience that we have when we come into contact with that dealer who's really at the transaction point. That's where it goes from industry to consumer. The dealer / retailer is the point of transaction. Subscriptions, rideshare are all becoming part of that. So to me, I think I start to think of that future retailer in some ways like a destination. And that's where I think things like amenities come into play. A nice boutique shop, if you will, some entertainment pieces, the ability to get some work done. I'll go to the airport now. I'll try to get there early so I can sit and get some work done.
Yep. Right. And, for the dealers listening, at NADA, we tested out some amazing massage chairs.
Ooh.
I highly recommend you put those in your lounges. You will get people to stay there for hours. So just a little
Just
FYI.
a quick plug.
And were these massage chairs where you had actually human massaging you? Like you're leaning over and they're or are you talking
no.
Just sitting in a chair getting massaged?
Like those floating ones,
And guess what? Those are at airports now too.
They are. Yes, exactly.
Both human massage spas, but also these, full-on massage chairs. Those are at airports now.
Yeah. So at NADA, we talked to, we had Inga Maurer on the show from McKinsey, and she's really just a mobility genius when it comes to the space. And one of the things she commented on was, especially when it comes to digital retailing, she didn't see any sort of revolution this year. It was more evolution. How do you see, or what have you seen from the digital retailing side specifically? How have you seen that change with new mobility come into play?
So I know when you refer to digital retailing, my tongue-in-cheek response is you're referring to a thing as a verb. And the reason I say that is because what happened is these companies got together and made this widget that you tack onto your website that basically combines the function of financing, trade-in, and vehicle selection, and the good ones combined in the aftermarket piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Brian Pash from PCG Consulting. He actually did a study with, I think, 10 different shoppers and put them in like a lab all together and had them use different quote unquote digital retailing tools. And then he interviewed them on their experience. And if I recall, and I'm not representing this, but just from looking into it, if I recall, all of them came out more confused. It didn't actually remove any friction and
Right.
solve anything for them. So to me, when we say, digital retailing's, going to change things, well, all it really did was consolidate some existing tools into one for the dealer's sake. And it actually made it could have made a smoother experience or not. And if the user got through it, the dealer got the same result. He got the finance info, the trade info, vehicle selection info, but it didn't actually change the experience between the dealer and the consumer to actually get to the point of transaction. So
Right.
no, there's nothing revolutionary about that at all. So let me add to that. When we talk about mobility as a service, like hire car specifically, what's hire car doing? Well, it's helping a retailer monetize, actually drive revenue on metal, on vehicles sitting on their lot that are costing them money. That's change, right? That is complete change. Oh, and it's also putting consumers into vehicles that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to get into because they couldn't afford it.
Yep.
That's change, right? So what happens is, in this case, there is now a fourth consumer acquisition channel. There is a new way for a retailer to acquire new customers that they weren't before. So, and people, I say, well, what's the for? Well, you can sell them a car. That's a way to get a customer. You can do service on a car, right? So they don't have to buy the car from you, but they can take it to their local dealer. That's consumer acquisition. Parts, right? You can advertise parts online and people can come buy them that would never been to your dealership. So that's a way to acquire customers. And now I think you have vehicle subscriptions, and the whole rideshare piece is that fourth dimension that didn't exist just a couple years ago.
Yep. And that fourth dimension, I think, really helps kind of segue into Reese's next question, but that's hitting the topic of how do you stop or slow down depreciation costs?
So what are some, newer trends or ideas or products or services that, that are helping dealers offset depreciation on those pieces of metal that are rotting away on their lot?
All right, I gotta be funny. Is this a loaded question?
Yeah, sure is.
Because I'm not going to give you a PC answer here. To me, right now, because we have new players getting involved with the transaction of vehicles in a new model, when you really sit down and pick it apart, everyone's got to make money. The OEM has to make money. The retailer, hire car, has to make money. Everybody has to make money, and the consumer has to pay for that. So without actually sitting down, putting pen to paper, my immediate thoughts are, my gut tells me that it's not economically viable. But by working at it and sticking with it, like we were talking about earlier, it will work itself out over time. I'll share a story with you going back to when I got in the auto industry. Was in 2001, literally within a month from 9/11, which changed everything. It changed how we go to the airport. Suddenly had to get there 2 hours early. And for a few months, the world was frozen, and I had just started this new job at HomeNet, and I didn't even know if I was going to have a job after a month. Dealers were frozen. Everything was frozen, almost like we're heading into right now with this coronavirus situation. But, things started to pick up. This was 2001. The web had been around for 5+ years. When I talk to a dealer about a website, the typical response was, the internet is just a trend. It will go away. That was one response. Another was, I hate internet shoppers. They know my prices and I can't make money off them, so I don't want anything to do with the internet shopper. And they also would say, if they had tried having a website, was, I tried having a website. It didn't sell me more cars. I don't want to talk about websites. So that was what? Just under 20 years ago, right? So for a few years in the early 2000s, there were dealers that stuck to that stubbornness. Don't like internet shoppers, don't want to share prices, don't want to have a website. And where are they today? I don't know. I'm sure some of them disappeared, some of them got absorbed, and some of them at some point said, I need to adapt. And they started to. And I think that's such a good learning lesson for today. It's like, to dismiss and blow off emerging trends, it is a risk, and that's a discernment that you have to make as a retailer. But if you dabble in it and you work it and it works out, it's a big payoff.
Right. And I don't think there's one solution that fits every dealership or fixes everything for all the dealers. But what I think is so important, which you just touched on, is to always be trying new things, try different little businesses and technologies that are coming out, because you don't know what is fully going to work for you. And the one thing you may think isn't going to work may end up being the most profitable piece of your business. And, we take that at HireCar kind of from a marketing approach. We're always testing different channels in different places because we don't know what's fully going to work everywhere. And the one thing we continually find is the one thing that we doubt the most usually ends up being the most profitable for us. And that's where it really comes into play running your business, is just always continually be trying new things. Because as these new technologies emerge, you're going to realize what's really going to help your business.
If I could build on that, because you're right, I think you have to be willing to try and adapt. You can't predict what's going to pop. You just sometimes it's the most unassuming thing that does. When I think of HireCar, to me the key to success for a company like HireCar that has a vision, has an idea, and it's putting it in motion, it's putting it tested, is you need a feedback loop. And maybe you have that, but you have to get the feedback from your buyer, which is the retailer and the strategic partners, all the people that have to make money. And you have to understand all the time what's working for them and what's not, and be able to adapt around that.
Yep.
Exactly. So what are a few things that dealers, can try after, looking at all these different technologies and businesses? And to go back to like the convergence aspect, there is so much more data available around mobility, specifically shared mobility. So what are a few things that dealers can try, and get their feet wet with, this type of new, future of mobility?
Just curious, are you asking me like specific technologies they could try?
Yeah, like specific technologies, maybe a couple different like services. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll bring Quick Ride into the mix, which I think you guys are familiar with. Quick Ride have you had Jeff or Fernando on the podcast yet? I don't think you have. They might be
the first time I met them was actually at NADA.
NADA?
Yeah.
Okay, so where Quick Ride comes into play is in the service department. Not everybody's going to wait for their vehicle, right? And you're not going to give everybody a loaner. Typically, the loaners, if it's insurance related or it's a VIP customer, you're going to have their car for a week, kind of thing. But if you're just going to have the car for a day, and you just need to get them to their place of work or back to their house, most dealers have a shuttle, and that shuttle could be like a full-on shuttle that seats many people, but usually it's a vehicle, it's a demo vehicle that one of the porters drives the customer around, but that has limited bandwidth, right? There's only so much I can do. So that's where Uber for Business came in and said, hey, well, why don't you just use our ride sharing, our ride hailing service in an integrated way to help get your customers there, which is great in theory. But some dealers are like, well, now we're putting our brand and that customer experience in your hands. We're giving it away. And I think a savvy dealer doesn't want to do that. They want to own and control as best they can that customer experience. And I know from talking with Jim at Uber, he understands that and has to adapt to that, right? Where Quick Ride comes into play is they provide a solution where the dealer is able to utilize Quick Ride's hardware, if you will, hardware and software, in a way that puts it in the consumer's hands. So it's like calling for an Uber or Lyft, but you're calling for the dealer's concierge ride hailing service. And it's giving the dealer more control over the experience, and it's giving them the data as well.
Got it.
That. So that's pretty innovative, right? It's not eliminating or causing the dealer to eliminate or stop doing what they're doing. It's giving them a frictionless way to do what they're doing a little bit better. And then from what I understand, Uber becomes the overflow for that, right? Because there is a cost. A dealer can only have so many Quick Ride services available per hour, per day.
Right.
And there's times where you need more. So that's where something like Uber comes into play.
Yeah. So, we were deciding before the show if we wanted to kind of go down this road. But we want to kind of address the current economic climate right now and how that is potentially affecting or going to affect auto retailers. Where do you see within the next 30, 60 days the impact of what's happening and how that's going to affect auto retailers?
And for context, you're referring to the way that everyone's responding to the coronavirus.
Yeah, exactly.
Correctly. So I think it's Morgan Stanley who does a forecast. They update it every quarter. I think just yesterday adjusted their forecast that new car sales would drop down to around 15 million, which is a pretty big dent. That's like recession level type of dent. Does that mean that's going to happen? We don't know because it's a forecast. So I think people are certainly bracing for that downturn effect, but also probably hoping it's not too bad. And if one thing's evident, I think the longer that we continue to make over drastic measures, the more it's going to hurt because there's going to be that residual effect over time. So the longer it goes on, the longer that's going to impact. There is a domino effect creating. I think it was South by Southwest,
right?
Because they canceled. I heard on a report today that they might have to lay off upwards to 30% of their personnel.
Wow.
Right?
That's amazing. Amazing. That's terrible.
It is terrible. And so that's going to affect car sales, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Job, and I was going to get a car, but now I'm not. So, with the NBA, even Major League Baseball suspending operations. So, I don't even know how to think about that. What does that actually mean to the world? These are economic drivers that are just going to stop.
Exactly. It's crazy.
I don't understand how that's going to work. Are the players not going to get paid? Yeah. How does that affect the consumer markets?
Yeah.
Do you see any different channels that dealers can leverage during this time where retail sales are bound to decrease so that they can leverage to actually generate revenue or maybe create new revenue streams?
So I like that question. I'm an out of the box thinker. If I'm in the retail business, I think the first thing I'm doing is I'm embracing media, like video, live streaming, and podcasting, so that I can create a personable, real world experience with people. Keep the conversations going. Keep the information flowing, right? And it's also like a feedback loop. Keep hearing from others what they want and what they need. And then use that information to adapt and respond to that. So I think if you call it virtual media, digital media is going to have an increased role in all aspects that we can think about right now.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with?
That I would like to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Little plug.
not really. I think if you can't hear it in my voice, I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about the automotive industry, the auto retail industry. I'm passionate about mobility. The name of my podcast is AutoConverse: Mobility, Tech, and Connectivity. The tagline for it is how we're connected, and the way we get around, and that is a relatively broad spectrum, if you will, of topics and companies and people and ideas and technologies that you can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also really specific to how we're connected and the way we get around. So in that sense, it's relevant to everybody in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm passionate about. So I just encourage anyone that's out there, listening to this. Thank you for tuning in. What Nate and Reese, what you guys are doing, is necessary today for a company. It's like you said, your analogy is a podcast today is like for a company is like was a blog was for a company 10 years ago.
Yep.
It is necessary. Is it essential? Are you going to go out of business if you don't do it? No, but it's necessary and it's important, and it plays a key role. So, for you guys, keep doing what you're doing. I would encourage you to always, like we're talking about here, test new ideas, push the envelope a little bit, and put the time into it, and see what you get out of that.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
And you guys can catch a show every Wednesday at 2 p.m.
Yeah, 2
right?
Central. It's the Mobility, Tech, and Connectivity Show. It's streamed live on our YouTube channel. So if you go to autoconversion.net and click on the YouTube link, you'll see that.
Yep.
And, I appreciate you bringing that up. The show format, which we launched almost 2 years ago, has kind of been guest-based. So I'd bring on a featured guest and we'd powwow a conversation. And usually I'd bring in some news and some current events and make those part of the conversation too. But where I want to take the show, talk about new ideas, is I actually want it to serve more as a meeting place, if you will, for people like yourself, for people that are listening, kind of an open forum meeting place that's there every week. And if you stop by and tune in, every other week or once a month, whatever works for you, we need to build community around that, right? Because it's building on the relationships and the information and knowledge transfer, if you will. So there's a live stream, so you can go to YouTube and you can use the live chat, but we do it just like we're doing here. We have a Zoom webinar, and you can register and you can be on the webinar. And the benefit of being on the webinar is you can meet the people that are on the show. We can turn your mic on, and so you can ask questions, with your audio, right?
That's awesome.
So we're, you guys, open invitation for you guys to really take advantage of that. We're actually looking to launch very soon. A couple of things. We're launching an event that you know about, Nate, the Mobility, Tech, and Connectivity Exchange.
Yep.
Which is a 3-hour media and networking event. And the whole idea is that all the people that are involved with the digital programming that we do, it's a place for us to come together and meet on a periodic basis. We're going to do 2 in 2020, but come 2021, the goal is to have 4 every 3 months. And so it's a chance to meet in person with everyone that you're collaborating with. And then the other thing we're introducing is, I'm calling it a mobility mastermind. It might sound a little cliche, but that's more of a closed group of people that are committed to a monthly get together to focus on creating that feedback loop and expanding on these ideas. And that's a premium service that we'll offer. But the show will be that open public forum, to kind of, really create the awareness and the larger conversation.
Wonderful. Cool. Thanks, Ryan. It was great having you on the show. And, we really need to get a proper sign off. But thanks for joining us for another episode of Mobility Revolution, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.